Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 316 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast. There's a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight is the greatest hostess in the entire universe, Aaron Paulette. How you doing, Aaron?
You know, I think you missed a perfect opportunity to go, ACP 316, I just enlightened your ass, or something like that.
I don't know if I get that reference.
Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've had the big thing that, like, back in the 80s when I was, like, an elementary school student, somebody mentioned to me that, oh, yeah, no. If they did all those sort of wrestling moves in real life, they would die. They're all just following a script. This is all this is all show. And I just went, they lied to me. And I never watched wrestling ever again, even though now I understand more about it. And I'm like, you know what? It is actually a pretty amazing art form. what they were doing. And I have watched a few like classic matches. They'll pop up on like YouTube and I'll be like, oh, well, I'll watch that. Man, that is impressive. What, like, not that they were faking doing all those moves, but how do they do that and not kill each other? And so, but by the time Steve Austin was hit the scene, I was completely unaware.
It was just a little throwaway line, and you turned it into a bit.
Well,
yeah,
I make everything awful.
So how am I doing? Well, for the first time in a long time, I am feeling better, and so hopefully that will continue. Although I've got the sniffles, and I think it might have to do with all the rain we've had because of Hurricane Helene, and that brings out the mold and the mildew, and I think that's causing me. So, dear readers, when you hear me sniffling, I apologize. I'm trying not to do it straight into the microphone because I'm sure it sounds gross, but I may do it, so I'm sorry. How are you doing, Weer'd?
I'm doing good. So, yeah, did you guys weather the storm okay?
Oh, absolutely. People were checking in on me, and I'm saying, no, we're fine, because we are midway down the East Coast. Just find Daytona Beach, you'll know where we are. And this thing hit at Tallahassee, which is actually, think of the crook of Florida, and it was actually further west. So this thing hit way north and way west of me, and we just got rain. I mean, the joke is that, it's only when a hurricane becomes a Category 3 that Floridians have to care, and to a certain extent that's correct. And so for us, we just got tropical storm amounts of wind and rain, which, if you've been here any amount of time, it's nothing. And so yeah, there was wind, there was rain, came out the next day, and there's branches that have been knocked down, but otherwise no damage. So yeah, we're doing fine. Tallahassee took a massive hit, and they aren't doing well. And then it continued up into the Carolinas, and my heart goes out to North Carolina because they're getting all that water dumped on them, which is then flowing down and washing away towns. It seems like, and so I really didn't expect that it would happen. I figured Helene would spend most of its energy, in the Appalachian Mountains, but apparently, I mean, it was a Category 4 when it came ashore, and it was awfully big. Friend of the show, Nissa Woods, sent me a diagram, picture, whatever, from a website that said that, Helene was larger than the state of Indiana, with a picture of Indiana right in the middle. And she was concerned, and it was like, no, I am fine, because we've got the culture and the infrastructure for that. But yeah, just so big and so strong that it's doing a lot of damage. Last I heard, over 100 people dead, and I haven't yet gotten the number of, millions or billions of dollars worth of damage. This is going to be really awful for a lot of people. So, I realize that it's trite to say thoughts and prayers, but there's very little else that I can offer. There are very good charities out there that you can donate to, so I encourage you to donate to them so that they can get relief. But yeah, there's not much I can do. I don't know. I feel like I've talked this to death. Do you have any questions, Weer'd?
No, just I just wanted for you to tell the world that you were fine, and give our thoughts, because I've seen some of the destruction, especially in North Carolina, where they just towns got washed away, roads just have disappeared underneath silt, and it's awful. And again, there's been a tremendous amount of loss of life, and so I just wanted to give some reverence to that, and that's all. So on my end, we got a little bit of rain, and that was it. And and my on a lighter note, my daughter was my wife got out of town this weekend because her work is kicking her butt and all that. She's like, I think I'm going to go up to New Hampshire by myself, if that's okay with you guys. You can come with me if you want. I'm like, and my daughter's like, no, I want to go to the gun range. I'm like, okay. and Aaron, the apple does not fall too far from the tree. My daughter was shooting the ever-loving bejesus out of my LCR 22. My daughter loves revolvers.
Yeah, well, when you said that, I knew it was either going to be revolvers or 1911s.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think the 1911 is still a little much for her. I think at this at this stage right now, we're just sticking with 22s. I guess in theory I could bump her up to like some light 38s in another revolver, or like if there's a pistol that she's interested in, she could probably step up to 9mm at this point. But right now, we're just keeping it small. It's just lots of 22. But the LCR specifically, she was in love with, which actually goes into something that goes in if you're taking newbies out. Like, sometimes a light gun is more important to the comfort of a new shooter than a heavy gun that's going to soak up a lot of recoil, because for her, she just found it easier to hold it out and get all of the, get the sights aligned and all of that stuff. And so, and the recoil still minimum, because it's the LCRs are just devil magic as far as their recoil mitigation. So yeah, it was, but it was a very, very good time, but I've been super busy. Haven't had a chance to clean any of them yet.
Oh no.
Yeah, it'll happen.
Anyway.
But so that's that. So but we were talking about the hurricane, and this popped up. I think it was it David, you were discussing it the other night?
Yeah. So by this point, when this airs next week, you all will likely have seen it, because I've seen it on Facebook, but this was actually brought to my attention by David on Sunday, and there's a picture floating around, and it says, public notice, local state of emergency, city of Okeechobee, Florida, Hurricane Helene. Under the authority of City Ordinance Number 1297, adopted by the City Council on September 26, 2024, as the city's designated emergency management official, I, Donald Hagan, Chief of Police, hereby declare a local state of emergency within the municipal boundaries of the city of Okeechobee, Florida, in effect as of 9 a.m. Eastern Time, September 26, 2024, and remain in effect through 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, September 27, 2024, unless terminated early, and may be extended based on operational conditions due to Hurricane Helene. I know you're tuning out. Bear with me here. We're almost done. Said declaration prohibits the following acts for the duration of a declared state of emergency per Florida Statute 870.044. The sale of or offer to sell with or without consideration any ammunition or gun or other firearm of any size or description. The intentional display by or in any store or shop of any ammunition or gun or other firearm of any size or description. the intentional possession in a public place of a firearm by any person except a duly authorized law enforcement official or person in military service acting in the official performance of their duty. And there's a bit more, but you don't need to know. It's just, he signs it, and at the time of the issuing, blah, blah, blah. And so a lot of people are upset by this, and understandably so. And so when David sent me this picture, he asked me, I think it was, is this real? Is this legal? Is this constitutional? And at the time, I couldn't determine if it was real or not. It sure looked correct because it got the names right and it got the statutes correct. More on that later. But I couldn't find anything about the city of Okeechobee issuing it, so I thought it might be a hoax. I don't think it is at this point because AmmoLand, among other things, have picked this up. But let me tell you what's going on, and it's a fairly deep dive here. But the very short version is somebody screwed up really badly. And I'm not sure if that would be the chief of police or someone within his department or the city council, which adopted this ordinance, but it's bad. And considering that I can't find it, I've heard rumors that it was shut down within a day, if not sooner, and that would make sense. If they're trying to bury it, it would explain why I can't find details on it. Okay, so the flyer specifically referenced Florida Statute 870.044, and it literally does say what the flyer said it does. It won't let you sell, buy, trade guns or ammunition, and gun stores have to stop displaying them, and unless you are military or police, you can't carry a firearm. All this is true. However, this flyer, statement, ordinance, whatever you want to call it, is missing two very key parts of that statute. And I encourage our listeners to go look it up if they so desire. It's stupidly easy to look up Florida laws. They're organized intelligently, they're in plain English, and there's a link to them in the show notes. And so, of the two parts, one of them is at the very end. And it says, nothing contained in this chapter shall be construed to authorize the seizure, taking, or confiscation of firearms that are lawfully possessed unless a person is engaged in a criminal act. Now, that's your anti-Katrina law, because, as we know, after Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, you had all sorts of police officers, law enforcement going by confiscating people's firearms, and they never got them back. And so this specifically prevents that. I know that wasn't the stated concern for a lot of people, but I think that was an unstated concern, so I wanted to make that very clear. But the other thing, which was not referenced, and this is far more relevant to this particular situation, is the very beginning of the statute. And that states, whenever the public official declares that a state of emergency exists, pursuant to the previous section, 870.043, the following acts shall be prohibited, blah, 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 blah. It's the previous statute which is critical here. So, the entire chapter of 870 is very specifically titled Affrays, Riots, Routs, and Unlawful Assemblies. So you can see where this is going, and there's nothing in there about natural disasters or declaring states of emergency based upon that. And when you read section 043, it specifically says, and this is long-winded, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says that the sheriff or designated city official has to determine that there has been an act of violence or flagrant and substantial defiance of or resistance to a lawful exercise of public authority, etc., etc. There is nothing in there about declaring a state of emergency based upon a natural disaster. This is a statute that was enacted in order to prevent riots and looting from degenerating into gunfight in the streets. Well, that's speculation on my part. I don't know for certain, but that's the way it feels to me. Now, I obviously don't agree with that, because in that sort of situation, you really need the right to defend yourself, specifically because we're a stand-your-ground state, and any law which, in an emergency, prevents you from legally exercising your right to armed self-defense, I'm opposed to. But I'm simply interpreting that statute as I see it, and I think it was meant as an anti-escalation issue. Now, given that a hurricane is not an act of violence or flagrant defiance of or resistance to public authority, I don't see how the following section, which the chief of police quoted, could possibly apply. So, the law itself is real, and, well, I suppose we could argue its constitutionality, but according to the legislators in Florida, they believe it is. But this specific application is not. So, we've ruled out the potential hoax, and so this brings me to my oft-repeated incompetence or malfeasance question. I don't know if this is an accidental misunderstanding of the law or a deliberate misapplication of the law on the part of the city council and the chief of police. But what they are claiming is not supported by the other statutes. And this is where things get interesting. Because, you see, in Florida, we have something known as preemption with teeth. Preemption means that the state of Florida has declared that it has a monopoly on all firearms laws, and no lesser organization, be it a county, a community, a city, or whatever, they aren't allowed to pass gun control laws. And if you do, the with teeth kicks in, and that states that anyone who breaks this law can be fired from their job for cause and possibly fined and criminally prosecuted for it. And so this is a really good way to prevent petty bureaucrats and control freaks in various communities from passing their own private gun control laws, because not only is it unconstitutional, but there will be severe penalties. I don't know if this can be levied against the chief of police and or the Okeechobee City Council, because it was a temporary ordinance and not a full gun law. I don't know, and it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. But I understand why people see this and they freak out, and I freaked out for a moment too, but I did some research, and yeah, somebody is probably not going to have a job before October is done, and it'll just be interesting to see how many of those are fired and potentially fined or prosecuted. So that is my info dump on the City of Okeechobee incident. Have I covered everything weird?
I think you have. I really appreciate that, and I'm glad you did, because it was originally discussed. We were discussing before the show started. Should we put this in there? And I'm like, Aaron, if you want to do it, go ahead, because we got a Floridian here, and that's exactly what I was hoping for. So yeah, this will be interesting. I think it also may factor in if anybody was arrested or harassed under this ordinance. Mm-hmm. And if and how long it was actually in effect before they rounded up the flyers and stayed the order. There might, not saying it makes it any better, but it certainly is more inviting for leniency. Mm-hmm. If like you said, if there is grounds that this is counting as the type of infringement that is illegal in Florida.
Yeah, this is that whole, I'm not a lawyer, clearly, so I don't know if a temporary city ordinance counts as a law, and therefore breaks the preemption clause, I don't know. If there are any people listening who are familiar with Florida law, please let me know. But yeah, if I hear anything else about this, I will be sure to update everyone, because if it does happen, there's likely to be a bloodletting, and there deserves to be.
Well, all right, and continue. So now switching over to my side of the local politics. This was an interesting little story. Is that an official letter was the State Ethics Commission sent out a letter to the Chief of Police, Chief Sean Crevier of Weer'd, Massachusetts, a town that I will say it used to be the home of Mike the Gun Guy's gun shop. I did a little bit of research, and I believe he is officially out of business, at least as a gun dealer in the state of Massachusetts at the time.
Good.
Of this recording. Yes, very, very, very good. I've heard some other stories which actually lines up with some things of Mike's, that maybe the ATF had some issues with some of his paperwork, and that shutting down the shop was a easy way to make certain potentially sticky stuff go away. I will say that certainly on Mike the Gun Guy's blog, he has mentioned the fact that the ATF has given him a hard time on his paperwork, and given how unstable he comes across at all times, that doesn't seem out of character. Doesn't seem like the ATF is particularly bullying him. But essentially, the chief of police has been speaking out against the new gun bill that's going to soon come into effect, and there's some developing stories at the time of this recording, so you may or may not know if Maura Healey has signed an emergency provision on it, which will make it go into effect beforehand. It will also make the referendum question that we are currently working on null and void, because you cannot repeal an emergency provision law with a referendum. Which in and of itself, we'll be talking about this next week. Well, we'll be talking about next week if it happens. If nothing happens, there may be something else to talk about it. But at the time of this recording, I don't know. But as we mentioned last week about how the training provision has been put on hold because nobody has the money or the time or the inclination to write the training protocol that needs to be written, and so they put an emergency provision in because essentially they're making essentially becoming a gun owner illegal in the state of Massachusetts, because there's no way for you to actually get a permit. And so I think that if Maura Healey forces the hand on this, she may regret it. She may not. I don't know, but I certainly thought that she may have regretted her little edict that she did when she was Attorney General, that essentially declared commonly held firearms illegal and illegal for forever. So even if you bought something and had something free and clear, they could technically knock on your door and send you to prison. But that never came to light. She became governor. So we will see. But again, this chief is pointing out the fact that essentially it's unconstitutional, it's super bad, and the police aren't supporting it because it doesn't. Let's see, one of the things he says does little to actually address gun violence. All it does is penalize the current and future law-abiding gun owners, which only emboldens criminal offenders to increase gun violence. And that is 100% correct. There is not a single stipulation in this bill that actually does anything against the people that are actually killing people in the streets of Massachusetts. And in fact, it just goes after law-abiding gun owners like myself. And the police don't like it because it just gives them more crimes to look after for people that aren't problems, and doesn't give them any extra money to go after these crimes. And so, yeah, it's a lot of bother, and I shame on the State Ethics Committee for saying that supporting the U.S. Constitution is an ethics violation. And Chief Creevier, thank you so much for standing up for our rights.
What I thought was interesting was that when the State Ethics Commission decided to punish the chief, they made a big deal about it, but did very little. Mm-hmm. And the article says they resolved the matter with a public education letter rather than any sort of judiciary proceeding, because summarized, free speech is difficult, yo.
Mm-hmm. Free speech is difficult, and even Massachusetts lawmakers have got to have, especially given that, like, we've had Katano, we've had NYSERPA, we've had McDonald, and we've had Heller. Like, not only does the Second Amendment, like, the simplest phrase on earth, like even a child can understand it. Like, that's all there is. But the courts have been ruling and essentially have been directly saying, yeah, that stuff you're doing, it's not allowed. And yet, we're going to do it only harder. They have to know. Like, some of them might be that stupid. Not all of them are that stupid.
So basically, Chief Crevier got his fingers slapped and told not to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, it does stink for those of us who are pro Second Amendment and pro free speech. But I think it, again, I'm speculating here, but I feel like the state's Ethics Commission did it this way because otherwise they could open themselves up for a First Amendment lawsuit, and they decided they didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. And then, furthermore, again, doubling down on support of this gun law, which itself is very controversial. Again, the legislature really kind of played it fast and loose with a lot of things. There wasn't any opportunity for the pro Second Amendment groups to speak to the legislature on against the bill, because it was all done in closed sessions. Like the SAFE Act. Yes, exactly. I mean, it's like so many of these anti-gun bills, they have to push it through in the dead of night. Even in deep blue anti-gun states, like one-party anti-gun states, even then they have to do it kind of under the cover of darkness. And so, this is one of those things of they don't want to draw too much. That's again why I'm speculating on whether or not Maura Healey is going to be signing the emergency provision again. I just heard some rumbles that's going through, but I haven't had a chance to confirm it, and I have my doubts on whether or not that's going to happen. But
so briefly, you said that emergency provisions couldn't be repealed in the normal way. Why is that? No, they could be done by referendum. So Massachusetts is a referendum state, so we're currently collecting signatures. If you are in the state of a registered voter in the state of Massachusetts, or some registered voters in the state of Massachusetts, contact them and tell them to get themselves to a gun shop, gun club, or some other Second Amendment supporting thing. I know another one that's going through. Hate to be partisan about it, but there are a number of Donald Trump stores all around the state selling Donald Trump campaign stuff and merchandise, and but all of those places have petitions there as well. Again, that's not an endorsement of Trump. That's just that is just something that has been done in all of those locations. I'm trying to remember if I mentioned last week, but my wife and I, she came home from work. Actually, I think it was after we finished recording, but she came home from work, and I'm like, hey, the gun club is open right now with the guy that's collecting the signatures. Can I get you? I know you just got home from work, but can I get you to swing down with me to the club, and we'll so we can have I can bring an extra registered voter with me. She said, yeah. So we went down and we signed up, and then came home. Quick, easy.
Super simple.
Yeah.
You just sign your name. But essentially, if we collect enough signatures, it will be able to go up on the ballot, and the ballot wording will simply be repeal. Essentially repeal this law, and just it never happened. We go back to the crappy laws that we had before this. And
I remember you telling me that story last week.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and then. But if I believe, it's my understanding, I might be wrong. I'm not deeply vetted in these procedures, but I believe that if it's signed with an emergency provision, then it can only be repealed through legislative action. So a referendum would not work.
Okay.
So again, if you're in Massachusetts or know someone in Massachusetts, get them out there to get the signatures. Also, I know, probably at the time that you're listening to this, the Topsfield Fair is going on. The Topsfield Fair the Gun Owners Action League have a booth. It's usually at the hunting expo, and so they will be collecting signatures there as well.
So another thing we talked about last week was the modded SKS of the second would-be assassin of Donald Trump.
Yes.
And we both were saying there's no possible way that guy could have gotten shots on target because 7.62 by 39 is a heavy round, and that scope was secured with electrical tape, and he would be lucky to get in the right zip code. And then Brandon Herrera came along and did his thing.
Yeah, well, actually, I want to step back, too, for another huge error here, is that at the time that the shooter was engaged by Secret Service, Trump was between 300 and 500 yards away from where the shooter's nest hide, whatever you want to call the backpacks filled with either ballistic plates or actual ceramic tile. I still haven't heard any confirmation on what was inside the packs that he had threaded the gun between, but that the actual spot that he had staked out was actually about 50 feet from the green of the hole that Trump was essentially 2 holes away from. So if in fact he had managed to remain hidden in there, he could have gotten essentially a point blank range shot at President Trump. So that would be so that in itself is pretty serious, even with a gun as boogered up as this thing was. But that all being said, Brandon Herrera got himself an SKS that he put one of those stocks on. And
he bubbled the heck out of it. Oh my God.
Bubbled the heck out of it. And he also, so he got one of the top cover mounts there. So essentially a top cover that had scope mounts attached to it. And so he put that top cover on. And of course, that one, he was actually able to make some pretty long range shots with that, even though it's not a great way to attach a scope. But then he also did put some sort of washers down to space the scope out, and then electrical taped the bejesus out of it to the gun. And it was wobbling around. He was physically moving the scope, and yet he was still able to make some long range hits on steel once he figured out where the zero was.
And not just that, but it was slightly over 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And with that wobbly scope, now he wasn't able to hit at first. He had to shoot a bunch of times to figure out what's the term, his hold?
Yeah.
But yeah, once he figured out where the bullet was hitting in reference to his scope picture, he was able to consistently, not 100%, but easily 70-80% of the time, hit a target. And his response was very close to what I was thinking, probably what y'all were thinking. It was just, what the hell? Never thought that would have happened. And so we laughed last week, but no, it could have definitely been a real threat, especially if, as Weer'd said, Secret Service didn't notice the guy until Trump was within a couple 100 feet of him.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's that. I had to put a correction in there because, oh boy, we were way off on those, and Brandon Herrera brings the science. So it's a super interesting video to watch, and
it's only like 10, 11 minutes. It's fun. Go watch it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, here's another kind of blast of the past story that we've talked about, and we mentioned that, of course, Alec Baldwin was his charges were dismissed because the prosecution had failed to admit some evidence to the defense in discovery, and the trial was going on, and there was just no calling it back. So essentially, just dismissed it with prejudice, and that's it. Alec Baldwin is not going to ever stand trial again for the wrongful. Well, not ever going to in a criminal case stand trial for the death of Helena Hutchins or the wounding of the director. I'm trying to remember what his name was, but he may still and probably is going to be sued by by her family for wrongful death and culpability, which will happen. But he's not going to face any prison time or any fines from the state because of that. And I noted that this would be excellent grounds for Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the armorer, who was convicted of what were her charges? Let's see.
Involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah, I just got to it just as you said it. Yeah, involuntary. So she was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, and she was, and her attorney had filed a motion to dismiss on the grounds of the withheld evidence. The judge has denied that, so she's going back to prison. Though the lawyer does say that they've had some other appeals going up the pipe already anyway, and this was just some new information because the Alec Baldwin trial wasn't going on when they had filed the first motion. But I will also say that, before you think that this is some sort of major miscarriage of justice, and I don't know if the judge certainly doesn't say it in this news story. But the big factor that I saw was that, so the evidence that was withheld was a bunch of cartridges that were loaded to the exact same spec as the loaded cartridges found on the set of Rust, and likely, though again they didn't have the complete cartridge because it had been fired. But likely with all between all the bits and pieces, the cartridge that Baldwin fired through Helena Hutchins and into the director. And these were all recovered from the Arizona home of Hannah Gutierrez Reed's stepfather, Thel Reed, and who is essentially the father of modern Hollywood armorers. He is a legend in the business. But essentially, the premise was that this is showing that trying to imply a chain of custody of the round that killed Helena Hutchins to Hannah Gutierrez Reed. Essentially, Alec Baldwin's whole plan was pin the malfeasance on her, make her the villain, and he's just another victim of her incompetence. And that certainly would be damning for her in that instance, because if her dad loaded up that ammo, and these are hand loads, so it's not a mass-produced ammo spec, that certainly could show that she was salting live rounds around the set in just pure bad safety, and so that's probably why even if this evidence had come through, things probably would have gone worse for you. So the fact that it was withheld was actually to your advantage. But again, she's got a pending an appeal. I don't know how strong those grounds are, but she's not done fighting yet.
Didn't I recommend that you reach out to one of our many lawyer friends and have them speak about the Baldwin case?
Yes, you did, and I haven't had a chance to.
Okay, I've just got to make sure you haven't forgotten.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and this next one, this is actually some. Again, there's been a lot going on in terms of the National Rifle Association, but reading this story does give me some hope for the new and improved post Wayne LaPierre National Rifle Association, and that is that they've joined forces with the Firearms Policy Coalition, who is one of the bomb throwers. They're one of the ones that, as we joked during the time when the Letitia James was attempting to dissolve the NRA, is you understand that they're the moderate ones. Like, these are the wimps. Do you really want to have the big Second Amendment activist group being someone like the Firearms Policy Coalition or GOA or even the Second Amendment Foundation? And so it is good to see, because, again, these groups used to butt heads quite a bit. And so they're going through and filing a case, United States v. Duarte, and it is it's a challenge against essentially nonviolent felons possessing firearms, which I think is phenomenal. I'm one of those people that is not quite willing to dive onto if you can't be trusted with a firearm, then you shouldn't be out in public without supervision clause, just because I don't think that that's feasible. But I do believe that our current setup of prohibited people, specifically the fact that there are nonviolent people who are having their rights taken away for the rest of their lives, is horribly unconstitutional.
So I've done some digging on this case, USA versus Stephen Duarte, aka Shorty. That is literally in the court document. And I am reminded of that H.L. Mencken quote about the trouble about fighting for human freedom is that you have to spend much of your time defending scoundrels. And Stephen Duarte is a scoundrel. He is a nonviolent felon, I grant you that. I would not have filed on this case. And I'm not saying FPC and NRA are wrong, but so the details of the situation, back in, I want to say, 2020, police officers noticed a car with tinted front windows drive past them, and they followed it, and they saw the car run a stop sign. And so they turned on their lights, and one of the officers saw someone in the back seat roll the window down and throw out a handgun. And the officers removed Duarte and the driver from the car, handcuffed them, and they discovered loaded magazines, between the center console and front passenger seat. And when a third officer arrived to search for the missing handgun, found that it was a gun with its magazine missing, and the magazine fits it perfectly. Now, I can't find anything on Duarte's arrest other than being a felon in possession of a firearm. So it's not like they got him on drug charges that I can tell, or mouthing off to the police, and he wasn't even the driver. So my thoughts on this are, first of all, if he had sat there and shut up, the driver just might have been given a citation for a traffic infringement and then sent on his way. Or perhaps the police would have run the IDs on everyone in the car. But my big problem is with the guy ditching the gun, which is irresponsible. I would have been a lot more comfortable coming to this man's rescue if he had the gun and, didn't throw it, but it was just, okay, yes, officers, you caught me, I have a gun, but I'm not a violent person. I would have an easier time justifying that. Because while on the one hand, yeah, if you've served your debt to society, you should have your rights restored. You shouldn't lose your Second Amendment rights. But again, it's the fact that he threw the gun away where anyone could find it. That really bothers me.
It's also, in and itself, it's an admission of guilt. Like, courts will often cite, like, if a murderer not only kills the person, but takes their body and buries it or burns it or that sort of thing, it is deemed and tries to, like, clean up the blood and all of that. That is often used in court cases as an admission of guilt, because it's stating, why would you clean up the blood? Like, if someone breaks into my home right now and I end up shooting them, I'm going to call the cops. I'm not going to move the body. I'm not going to clean up the blood. I'm not going to hide my gun or something like that. I am going to present everything as it is to the police when they come in, because this person broke into my house and I have got nothing to be ashamed of. And this is definitely one of those situations, and it does make my stomach sink a little bit, because it reminds me of Rahimi, of which we didn't talk about it a whole lot while it was going up the cases. And one of the reasons why I frequently wouldn't put it in the show notes is because, look, I'll talk about it when we lose. I was pretty sure that it was going to be a case that we were not going to win, because Rahimi was an absolute terrible person. He's a scoundrel as well. And that doesn't bode well. It bodes well when you're a Dick Heller or an Otis McDonald. Not so much when you are a Rahimi.
So, yeah, this is one of those cases where, in principle, I want them to win, but I could not sign on, because the last thing I need is to be the head of a charity, an organization that is all about responsible gun ownership, and here we are defending someone who behaved irresponsibly. Yeah.
No, and you got it. And again, the statement is, not only is he admitting guilt by throwing the gun out there, but what if he had gotten away with it? What if they had driven away with a gun just sitting on the side of the road?
And a violent person takes it, or a child.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I think we both agree that, if you're a nonviolent felon, there's no reason to consider you any different than someone with a clean background as far as your overall safety. Martha Stewart is, again, my absolute favorite example of someone who is a convicted felon who served time in prison, and is someone who I would have no problem, being together unsupervised with, because it's Martha Stewart. You may not like her. She may not be the greatest person on earth. You may think she got entrapped, but for whatever it is, she's clearly not someone who has harmed other people physically because of circumstances. So she's not the person who's going to punch you in the face. She's not the person that's going to slit your throat. She's not the person that's going to try to steal your wallet. And so, because of that, I don't care if Martha Stewart has a gun or not.
By the way, did you see that bit at the Olympics involving Snoop Dogg?
At the Olympics, no.
Okay, so I'm doing this from memory. I didn't plan this. Because you mentioned Martha Stewart, and Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg have become really unlikely friends, and I think it's adorable. And so Snoop Dogg was at the Olympics in Paris, and he's afraid of horses, but he didn't want to be afraid of horses. And so what does he do? He calls his friend Martha Stewart, who knows a thing or two about horses, and she apparently flies over to France to teach him about horses. And so there's pictures of them dressed up in equestrian garb. And so by the end of the field trip, let's call it, not only is Snoop Dogg petting the horses, but he's learning to ride them. And it's wholesome, it's adorable, but also just that mental image of Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg. One of them's the felon, and it's not the one you would have thought. but they've got this wonderful friendship. I just think it's cute.
Yeah, no, it is. It is pretty cool, and I'm looking at the pictures, and yes, Snoop Dogg with the riding coat with tails and the high boots, and he's got his riding helmet and all of that, with Martha, who's dressed the same way, and one of them looks very much in place, and the other one does not. And Snoop, I don't blame you for being afraid of horses; they're kind of scary. All right, last up, you just told me right there, you started looking this over and you were like, oh, I can't read any more of this, Weer'd. And I don't blame you, and I will just say I'm really just going to skim over it because this is mostly just an announcement on the standby, because much of this is the devil's going to be in the details, of which we don't have a ton at this exact moment, which is President Biden and Vice President Harris announce additional action to reduce gun violence and save lives. This is an executive order, and essentially President Biden has signed it, and it's got a number of things. I'm just going to skim these over really quick, but essentially it's going to have additional restrictions on machine gun conversion devices. There might be some draconian stuff in there, such as 3D printer files or things like that, depending on how essentially the ATF responds to this order. But right now you can't get much more illegal than machine gun conversion devices, because if it wasn't registered before 1986, it can't exist except as a dealer sample. There's a thing on unserialized 3D printed firearms. We will again see where this goes. It could essentially the moral of the story is these could either be absolutely nothing and don't worry about it, it's just feel good legislation, or this could be very, very hairy. As far as it goes, because it's all essentially demanding reports from various groups. And depending on what the reports say and how extreme the reports are is how much teeth is going to be in this executive order. Let's see. Encouraging safe storage of firearms.
Yeah, that's really comforting coming from Harris.
Yeah.
Who, as we talked about last week, said that she's perfectly willing to barge into your home and make sure that you're storing your firearms properly, with the unspoken, and if you're not, we're going to arrest you.
And I will also actually say, as an addendum to that story, I will note that there's no evidence that Harris, during her time as the Attorney General of San Francisco, had any officers going into people's homes simply to examine the condition and presence of the firearms that should be in that home. So that's in her defense. But again, the glib nature of that and the fact that there's been nothing walking back on that should actually, should be cause for concern. And again, the safe storage laws, I mean, some of these may be technically illegal under the Heller decision and all that, but also, and some of this is probably going to be super duper moot, because who's going to go to the government website that talks about safe storage of firearms versus any other place where you would learn about gun safety and gun laws. But safe storage of firearms is cool and good so long as it's voluntary. And all that. Clarifying Medicaid reimbursement on counseling on firearms safety. This one I'm going to have a hard time thinking that it's going to go well. Essentially, it's saying that you can essentially use Medicare or Medicaid services to have a professional counsel you on how to safely store your firearms.
You know, I really want to find out if Operation Blazing Sword can get a piece of that.
Oh, that would be interesting. Yeah.
Because we can definitely counsel on that.
Yeah.
And, you know, if we can maybe get some reimbursement. We may not be able to because we're a charity, but, maybe we can. I really want to find out more about that.
Yeah, but I mean, it also reminds me of like the whole premise behind Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, and just pointing out the fact that there's just so many anti-gun groups and a lot of the advisory boards to ethics of physicians, both internal medicine doctors, but also pediatricians, have been very, very anti-gun in the past, and essentially many of the questions and stuff that a doctor may ask you about your gun ownership, they're not necessarily trying to help you. They're vilifying the guns.
Yeah, that was really my impression, that this is going to be a way to fund doctors telling you guns are dangerous, you shouldn't have them in your house.
Yeah, and possibly throwing around that Kellerman study that essentially, that doesn't actually say, but has been interpreted as saying that you're far more dangerous having a gun in your home than you would be protected, which is absolutely not true.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Here is an ugly one. Is implementing state red flag laws. Essentially, it sounds like it's going along the lines of further of what the Bipartisan Savers Community Act did, which is essentially encouraging states to have red flag laws, which are some of the dumbest laws in existence, because you are taking someone who is you can abuse it like crazy, but also you're taking someone who's been determined a danger to themselves and others, and you are taking away their guns and leaving them unsupervised. Good idea. And so,
yeah, let's arrest the guns for being dangerous and leave the dangerous person alone.
Correct. Especially if they're dangerous to somebody else. They may be a stalker or such. And then all of a sudden police show up and say that we got to take your guns away because of, some legal reason. Well, guess what? They may have a pretty good idea of who called the cops on them. Let's see this other one. This is like the most double-edged sword in the Second Amendment, gun violence, however you want to think, is the funding community violence intervention. And there have definitely been some studies that have shown that these are people that are street people. They have connections to the various gangs and drug dealers and all that. And they are, in theory, trained to de-escalate, to essentially lower the levels of street violence and essentially interrupt the cycle of violence where someone shoots somebody else and then their crew comes after them and shoots them, and then the crew switches back and forth. But another big issue is that very, very often these violence intervention volunteers quickly degrade to essentially kind of running that dirty informant thing where they are working to conceal their own illegal activities while pointing the finger at the competition. So, yeah, it could be the best thing ever. It could be the worst thing ever. It could be nothing.
Well, that's nice and vague.
Yep, and there's also the clarifying Medicare reimbursement for violence intervention. I assume that's so they can pay some of these people to be out there helping out victims of gun violence and the cycle of gun violence. Let's see, facilitating advanced background checks for individuals under age 21. I thought this was in the Bipartisan Savers Community Act. I don't know exactly what this does. Maximizing enhanced background checks with red flag laws. This one is really gross. So what this one is saying is, if you are someone who's under the age of 21 and you're trying to buy a gun, if this potentially trips up enough, I get warning flags for the gun shop and or the FBI, they're just going to issue a red flag order against you. And so you in theory, you're 18, 19 years old. You come into the gun shop, you go, oh, there's a shotgun right there. That's perfect. That's what I always wanted. And you try to buy the shotgun and something about your past triggers them. They'll just say, no, we're going to take all your guns. And let's see, improving federal gun background check system. This is just giving money to help update NICS. It needs it all the time. And then there's just a whole bunch of reports on various stuff. So either way, that's the gist of it. I'm sick of reading it, but it could be just window dressing and really mean nothing. It could be heavy restrictions. It's just like the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. When it was enacted, it really didn't do anything at all. But as the various white papers and evaluations have been coming through, it has gotten more and more challenging to gun owners.
Yay.
All right, let's get the hell away from that, and let's get into talking about gun gear. And so recently, Miles was listening to David and I on Handgun Radio talking about terrible ways of carry, and he wanted to essentially talk a little bit about historical and current ways for left-handers to conceal carry.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Southpaw Corner. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about concealment holsters. After listening to a recent episode of Handgun Radio, where they talked about awful concealed carry options and then better concealed carry options in appropriate ways, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about some of the styles and what you're looking for in a good concealed carry holster. And the first thing I will say is Weer'd and David had some awful things about the old sausage sack holsters. And for those of us who have actually carried for over 30 years and are left-handed, at one point it was almost impossible for us to get a good concealed in the waistband holster that wasn't just your basic nylon Uncle Mike's or something along those lines. Cheap, floppy, kind of crappy, but that was what was available to us. Nowadays, we are pretty damn lucky about all the different options we have. There are still some handguns where it's difficult, but it can be done. So, obviously, there are shoulder holsters. You can get them in both Kydex and leather. There's the chest holsters. Again, mostly Kydex, but there are still some companies that make the leather ones. Those aren't really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about either appendix carry or in the waistband non-appendix, which when I say that, I'm saying, depending on whether you're left-handed or right-handed, either 9 o'clock to appendix or 3 o'clock up to the appendix. But behind the 9 or 3 o'clock position is getting to be too far back, and you're more likely to injure yourself or others while drawing if there's a negligent discharge. And with these, there's basically 3 good types of holsters. And like I said, you can get them for anywhere to carry in that area. Cross draw is another good one, as Ryan has found with his Browning High Power. But you generally have 3 materials. Well, 2 materials. Granted, one of those materials is kind of a big open concept, where the other one is Kydex. So you can get the all Kydex, and they can come in for in the waistband 2 style. Either a 2-part holster where they take 2 pieces of Kydex, crush them together around a mold to form the mold for the thing, and put a clip on it. The downside to that style is they're generally larger, and they have more chances of a edge, not necessarily a sharp edge, but an edge that can dig into your side, hip, whatever, your stomach, whatever it is. The more common one for an in-the-waistband holster is what they call a clamshell style, where they take a single sheet of Kydex, heat it up, and fold it in half around the handgun, and then they trim away the excess, add your hardware, add your clips, and there's your holster. I will be including some photos from a couple of manufacturers I do really like when it comes to this to show you what I'm talking about. The other single type of material that's used in a holster would be an all-leather in the waistband holster, appendix holster. These are usually steam formed, so they form and hold tight to your gun. And again, it can be either those are usually only in the clamshell style where they fold it in half, mold it around, trim the excess, add the clips, stuff along those lines. Those are less common. They're a lot harder to find, and a lot of times they have to be custom made for you, which is the big problem we had back in the day, early 90s. If you didn't get an Uncle Mike's and you were left-handed, that meant going to a leather worker and have a true custom holster made. Great thing, but very expensive and hard to do for people on a budget. Now, the third type of holster you find, they're generally done in the two-part, well, they are completely done in the two-part style, is a Kydex outer shell with the clip attached and a soft material inner shell. That soft material could be leather, neoprene, a cloth of some sort, or expanded cloth style or weave. I've seen Kevlar. They have a backing that is softer to go up against your skin with the harder outer shell with the clip on it, or clips a lot of times, to hold the gun in place and hold, in place and onto your belt. Those are generally larger because they're more like the two-piece Kydex style. So you have two larger pieces squishing together and then riveted on the outside edges. I have both styles of the clamshell all Kydex, and I have 3 different versions of the hybrids, one in leather, one in neoprene, one in I'm not even sure what it is. It's like a cloth, but it's a very loose knit cloth. So it has some good airflow, so it breathes a little better. You don't get quite as hot wearing it. And they all work really well. I personally don't like appendix carry. I'm a heavy guy. It digs the tops always dig into my stomach or my pelvis. Don't like it. I've tried different styles. It doesn't work for me. That being said, I wear mine at the quote-unquote 9 o'clock position, directly on my hip. That's where it's comfortable, and it's great for me. And then, like I said, I'm talking about this from a left-handed shooter perspective, but all these places make good quality, very dependable products at a reasonable price, and some of them are incredibly fast turnaround. There's one company that I buy from, and it will be one of the ones linked. It's a smaller company out of Arizona that I have never had a holster take more than 4 days to get from order to my hands. They do a phenomenal job. They're quick turnaround. They do all kinds of custom work. I've never gotten a custom printed Kydex holster from them, which would probably take longer, but I have not done that. And they do a great job. And the nice thing is they even, let's say they're going away to a show or if they're taking a vacation, they put it on their Facebook page, they put it on their website. So if you do order by chance why they're not in the shop, it's going to be a few extra days, and that's that. Like I said, there's a few companies I've used and a few more that I know of that do a very good job with these, and all of them, I think, do a great job. The biggest thing you got to look at is what their turnaround time is and what their ratings are and how people, who actually recommends them. And of course, the other type of carry is the in the pocket. When I carry my Ruger Max 9 and occasionally my smaller Canics in a pocket, I use a sticky brand holster. It is a cloth holster that is, you buy the one that fits your size. It's not a custom fitted one like the Kydex or any of those. It's not probably as nice as the Santee Nemesis. I just haven't been able to find one for the right gun for me. But you want to have something in your pocket to protect your handgun from crud getting in the barrel, stuff messing with the action, because pocket lint is a killer. It's gonna gum up your action, and if it does it enough, it's gonna stop your gun from working. And you also want to make sure nothing gets into that trigger. So when it comes to pocket holsters, you just gotta find what fits your pocket with your gun and protects your obstructions in the barrel and crud getting into the action and protects the trigger. That is something you just need to find the right thing for those. Ankle holsters, I have no experience with. It has never been something that would work for me. I have fairly large hands, so I have a tendency to lean towards larger guns anyways, so they don't really work in ankle holsters. Other people can speak more on that. It is just not something for me. And with that, I'm going to say I'm always willing to help out, so if anybody has questions or comments or needs help finding the right holster for them, please feel free to contact me through the MeWe or Facebook page, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. Thank you, and safe shooting.
Sausage sack always makes me giggle.
Yeah, it is a fun one to say. And and his statement about back in the day, that was all we could carry if you were a left-hander, and it's one of those it makes sense, because especially it wasn't that long ago, at least for old farts like us, Aaron, when concealed carry was just straight up illegal in most places. When did Florida get it in 89? Was it
1987?
Okay, 87. So it was still a good while ago, but it's one of those but it's not like with northern New England, where it's one of those Vermont, it's never been against the law to concealed carry. They just never enacted any law on that. Even now with some of the gun restrictions it's going through. No, you can just carry in Vermont. And so it's back then, most of the states it was illegal to conceal carry, so there's not that much market for concealed carry holsters, and there's even less market for left-handed concealed carry holsters.
I guess they were primarily selling to undercover or off-duty police and private investigators.
Yeah, no, that would probably be it. Actually, I don't even know if PIs were allowed to carry back then. I don't think PIs have any particular exemptions. So,
well, I mean, I will have you know that Magnum PI was carrying his 1911 as far back as 1980.
That is absolutely true.
And I saw it on television, so it must be accurate.
Yes.
Hollywood doesn't lie.
I don't remember ever seeing any police officer catching him doing it and actually letting him get away with it. It just either he was carrying the 1911 or he wasn't. And last up, I will just say, again, this is something that I hammer in all the time. If you're going to carry in a pocket, you absolutely need a pocket holster. It's not like a belt holster where, in this case, the nylon sausage sack is perfectly fine. You don't need it to hold the gun in place. You just need it to be there to cover the trigger guard and possibly control the orientation of the gun while it's in your pocket. Again, I remember my neighbor talking about carrying a Smith & Wesson J-frame revolver in his pocket, and was just mentioning, oh man, when I get caught in the rain though, it prints like crazy. And I'm like, well, what are you using for a pocket holster? He goes, what's a pocket holster? And I go, stay right here. And I just walked over to my house, went downstairs. I actually had an Uncle Mike's. I just got my DeSantis Nemesis, so I had an Uncle Mike's that I didn't need anymore, and I just gave it to him. And I said, "Here, this will fit your gun. Don't you ever carry without a pocket holster ever again. You don't want to shoot yourself."
How did you know it would fit?
It was the exact gun that I had. It was a Smith & Wesson 642.
Oh, well, so there you go.
Smith & Wesson J-frame. Plus, again, they're, as Miles noted, the sausage sacks. They are one size fits most. So if you if it's a compact revolver like this very same DeSantis Nemesis, when I upgraded to the my LCR for my pocket revolver, just same holster. It fits. And actually even more, the DeSantis Nemesis that I carry in my Beretta 21A, and it's actually the model for the LCP. It fits.
In part 2 of his interview with David Battaglia, not David Battaglia, because it was David and Anthony. In part 2 of his interview with Anthony Battaglia, David talks, and we still haven't learned what Accurate Mag is or what it makes.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. Continuing from my previous installment, in this segment I talk some more with Anthony Battaglia of Accurate Mag, this time about the formation of the company and their first forays into retro ARs.
2009 comes along and we started making magazines for the U.S. Army's XM 2010 with Remington, and we became part of that, and that's how Accurate Mag kind of started, and we became like a big OEM. We've always tried to get into that marketing, selling, but we're good at making stuff. We're not the best at selling stuff. And
I'm an author. I'm pretty good at writing stuff. I suck at marketing my stuff, so I feel your pain.
So this is like 2015, 16, 17, 18. And we've done a lot of projects for a lot of other companies. And cool. So let's just get to like 2022. I'm walking around the shop and I see a couple boxes. I see some like cool parts, and I'm like, what are these? Let's go down the dive of the deep end. We're old Italians. We never throw anything out. I got parts from, you need a submachine gun Colt mag. I got housings of them up the wazoo, And I'm like,
I come from a long line of pack rats on both sides of my family.
So I go,
neither of us know what that's like.
So I go, oh my God, why don't I put this stuff together and try and sell it? And it's boutique. It's not for everyone. I'm not trying to compete with any of the big guys. I just want to like make cool stuff for people, sell it at a fair price, and try and pay for my kids' college fund. That's basically it.
That actually is very much what I've heard Mark Serbu say. You're familiar with Mark Serbu?
Yeah.
He's a little bit more insane seeming than you are. You seem a little bit more sane than him. But he's said the same type of thing. Is like, I just like making cool stuff and selling it to people who appreciate it.
Yeah, because modern day corporate manufacturing is just all about target pricing, and these purchasing agents, you don't have a relationship with them it's used to. Like back in the day, my father would say things like, there would be purchasing agents who wanted the lunch at a strip joint at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday, and that's what you did.
Yep. The 3 martini lunch was a thing.
It was a real thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Now,
if you ever saw Mad Men, I knew folks who worked in advertising in the 60s, and they're like, if anything, they toned it down for the show.
The backdoor deals, I can't tell you how real they exist. It doesn't exist that much anymore. Now it's
not
just
to the
like,
same extent, at the same level.
They do exist, but now it's just like everyone just mother F's each other because it's just people drive deals to the point they sound insane. It's all about target pricing and just making sure that everything's protected, right? Everything's got to have an NDA. Everything's got to be on the straight and narrow because no one wants to lose. It's just like, I want to breathe. I want to breathe. I want to build cool stuff. I don't want to deal with your crap, but I have to because I actually like the people I work with and I want to give them the opportunity to make a living.
Right. Let's talk, if you don't mind now, about retro arms.
Yes.
The thing that first attracted me to your booth, because I am a retro head. As everyone on the podcast and everyone who listens to the podcast knows, I am a serious retro head.
Love it.
And how did that come about?
Well, one night I was walking through the shop and I found a bunch of fiberglass parts, and I'm like, what the f is this? And I start Googling it, and I'm like, oh my God. And then so next morning I asked my general manager, and I'm like, yeah, these were a bunch of parts that didn't meet a certain material criteria that a certain government didn't like. And you're like, okay, cool. So I start searching. we made parts for all these people, and I'm sitting here like, why can't I sell this? Now, to back that up, I was building a house at the time, and I was like, I'm broke. I'm like, I just got married. I'm building a house for cash because I didn't want to deal with our local government. I'm like, F off. And I'm like, I need money, right? So like everything I do, you start off selling onesie twosies to people,
right?
And then people get into it, and you're like, oh my God, it's something. So I'm like, screw it. So I met Mike Wheatland, who owns Nodex Bud.
Oh, that Mike.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's H&R at PSA now.
Yeah, I know.
First off,
I don't know him personally, but I've interacted with him
I've gotten to know
online.
him personally. I love
nice
him.
guy.
He's a fantastic guy.
Yeah.
And he's so
he's got a really pleasantly warped sense of humor.
Oh yeah. Oh totally. But he's the kind of guy you want working at PSA because he knows what the he's talking about. B, he'll tell you if you're 3,000s off on one direction. And he's not like a gobbling engineer who's out of college. Like, he knows his stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He's dedicated to the industry. He's part of the mission.
Mike and Nodec are one of the reasons I was able to get into the retro stuff that I got into.
Yeah, totally.
Because they were the only ones making that stuff. And, yeah, you could find surplus uppers here and there.
Yeah.
But if you wanted a proper
setup,
XM16A1 lower, you're SOL. Or you have to machine it yourself.
Yes.
And then I found Nodak Spud, and they got a lot of my money over the years.
So,
and then when they closed down, I was heartbroken. And then I saw his posts about, oh no, I'm starting the retro line at PSA. I'm like,
which is
that's only a few hours from here.
Yeah, being corporate, right? You got your good and your bad.
Yes.
But you want that like boutique artisanship kind of stuff, and he's got a lot of leverage over there, and but you're still working for a massive company,
right?
And you have way more resources, but you have a lot more oversight,
a lot more responsibility.
Yes, totally.
More opportunity, but less freedom.
And I have a lot of respect for that you're able to do that. So we're just trying to see where we go. I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes.
Sure.
If there's an opportunity to make something, to make a little bit of money, I'm happy. But I just want people to have good quality products. And, look, if it doesn't work out, I'll credit them the opportunity. They can buy something else in our line. Or I'll find something else in our purview of crap that we have. So, what's going on with the retro line? So we've got some Mark 18s, we've got some M16A4s, I've got some uppers that I bought from Double Star. We made some LSWs, some M16A2s. I'm trying to start some 9mm stuff. We're doing a slick side M4 flat top. I have a bunch of scrap M4 uppers that I went through, and I just machined off the forward assist. That's why it looks like that.
And the Brunton bump.
Yeah, I love it. I've got some old U.S. Ordnance ones that were able to do some trigger works. I got like 13 of those. And I'm trying to figure out the 9mm stuff, because I make the 9mm conversion block.
Right.
A lot of people don't want to use the Glock mags. So I want to try.
Yours takes the Uzi mags like the original Colt?
Yes.
I think I may have one of your units in my 6450 repro.
So let's just take this guy. Now, there's two models. This one has a cam that pull out. That's for like a Rock River Arms. The Colt ones don't go with the feed ramp, and it gets pinned. So same part, just different machining setups.
Okay, then it's not one of yours because mine has set screws to lock it in place.
That's what that is.
Okay.
Yeah, but that has one set screw in the bottom.
Yeah, mine does. Mine has two smaller set screws, not the one larger set screw.
Oh, okay. Is it more boxier?
It's been in that receiver for a while now, so I don't remember exactly. But contour-wise, it looks very much like this one.
And this is a Metal 4 magazine.
Yeah, I've got some actual Uzis that I've modified.
So we're going to buy some of these with this and just sell the kit, which would be cool. And again, it gives people the opportunity to, they have a lower, they want something, they don't want to do another 4473 and all that. But else, that's my mission.
And plus, one of the things that we have discussed on the podcast on numerous occasions when it comes to 9mm PCCs is the magazine should go in the pistol grip if it's a pistol magazine, because that's what a pistol grip is for. But for the retro heads, the 6450 or 635, if you're going for short barrel, that's the nostalgia.
Right. So you got let's say a certain manufacturer who has a dedicated lower for a 9mm.
Right.
Cool, great, but that's not how it was in 1990 when the DEA was running, an old school M4
or 1980 when
631 or some shit.
1980 or 81 was when the 635 first came out as the very first 9mm AR subgun. So and Colt was using as many parts as they already had.
You take like an A1 like this guy, right? They didn't even have brass deflectors back in the day. They were just straight up
shoot right-handed or eat the brass.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I like Chris Bartucci's book, because we have all these, we have history, we have pictures, we have advertisements, we know what it was like back then.
Right. You've got the data, it's simply a matter of applying it to modern manufacturing. Because one of the things that you showed me yesterday was you couldn't get a gas deflector in time for the show, so you 3D printed one.
Yeah.
And it looks great.
I got up at 5:30, I made a model, and then I had my brother 3D print it, and then I went into the tool room, made it in the spring, and then put it all together. But again, I have that ability to do that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we've talked a lot about 3D printing on the show because he's serious about it and he infected me. So my 3D printing is all his fault. A lot of our listeners are into 3D printing as well.
Yeah. So let's quickly talk about it.
It looks really nice.
So this is a standard M4 upper, right? And you can see this like kind of notch how it was milled.
Yep.
This mill, right? So we just straight up milled this. I took this, ground it down, made the little spring-loaded guy. There's a spring in there. And this is like a H-bar beefy 9 mil with a 750, right? Because you've got a bayonet lug on it. You're like,
there's a lot of barrel on the forward end of that bayonet lug.
Yeah.
We talked quite a bit more, so stay tuned for additional segments from our discussion.
So here at Nodex, Bud, we take the quality of our retro lowers very seriously.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
Remember, Weer'd, there were lots of potty words in that interview that you need to censor out.
Oh, yes. Oh, boy. David, some of the ACP people will give me some fairly rough segments. I mean, they're all wonderful. I'm not complaining. Give me some rough segments, and I will be doing editing as I'm listening to the segment for the first time. And David sends me, same with Sean last week. Sean just sends just the absolute polished final product that you listen to, and so I just now have gotten to the point where like I don't even have my editor hat on when I'm listening. I'm just listening to it. And then you texted me just before the show started going, there's a bunch of swear words in this segment. I'm like, is there? Oh yeah, I guess there are. Oh crap. So yes, future Weer'd, you need to put your editor hat on and bleep those out so that we can stay nice and clean for all the nice people that listen to this show with their kids in the car. It's also amusing at how many businesses start out with I'll just sell a few to my friends, and suddenly they're like, oh wow, I'm selling so many of these to friends and acquaintances that I can make a living doing this.
I unfortunately have nothing to add. I haven't had that experience. Wish I could.
Yeah.
I know, I just spread everything down. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good. But you know what?
But you know who's even better than good? Our listeners.
Our listeners! That's a ham-handed segue. That's a segue. Thank you to all of our listeners, each and every one of you. We really appreciate you tuning into this fine show. But we got to give an extra special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers Podcast to sign up. You can get yourself an early release of the podcast, plus there's bonus content like the hilarious blooper reels, the ACP film track, and the ACP bag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
And you know what? If you're not listening to us on Pocket Cast, fix that. Especially if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts. Don't listen to that anymore. Go to Pocket Cast. We're not sponsored by them, but you know what? If they want to sponsor us, please. You can get more from me at my blog, which is weerdworld.com. That's weerdworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
The sausage sacks make me giggle, but apparently Weer'd can eyeball their volume exactly. His facility for filling a floppy pocket with something hard is Assorted? No, our facility is Assorted, and so's our podcast. Whatever. Good night, everyone.
I'm enjoying just holding the laughter in as much as I could. Good night.